everyone. In this video we are going to take a look at a looping parallax background in using HTML and CSS. And our end result is going to be this here. And if I refresh this, you'll see that the satellite kind of starts out slow and then kind of spins off, and then it's just looping. The spaceship seems to be kind of going up and down, and the background is just kind of looping in the back, moving as it's going. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And here we have everything is inside this one HTML file, which I'll upload all of this with the presentation, so you'll be able to download it. So it's got the internal CSS, although again you'll want to have external CSS, but just for file size and to keep everything kind of nice and organized, we've got the CSS inside internally and the head tag. But normally I would want you to have your CSS external. So first of all, I have the background black, but then we're using the keyframes, the @WebKit keyframes, and we've got one WebKit, one MOTS, MS, and O for Opera. So there's 4 different sets for the different browsers, but each one of these is doing the same thing. We've got the keyframe named of space move, and we've got the starting position and the end position. And then we have the starting position of 0, 0, which is the top left corner, and the end position of the left being negative 1600 pixels. Now we're using that number because the image itself is 1600 pixels wide by 484 pixels high. And the reason why it's so wide is because basically all I did is just took the image, doubled the size, copied it, and then flipped it and moved it over so that it would be a continuous loop without showing a hard edge. Because when the image loops itself, it tiles itself, and if you don't go into Photoshop and kind of wrap the image in Photoshop so that you don't have a hard, you'll see this hard edge of where the image stops. So you can kind of see when you hover over it and see the whole thing that it's kind of mirrored. And it's like that just because I flipped it in Photoshop. But you can't tell because the width of the space that you can see the actual background is only 400 pixels. So you're only seeing 400 pixels at a time, which isn't enough for you, for the viewer, to see that this background image is mirrored. Now the other 3 are using a percentage. So we start at 0% left, 0% top, and we end with 400% left and 0% top. Now that 400% is actually equivalent to this 1600 because we're basically multiplying the background number by 4. So that's how we're getting that 400%, because the image itself is 4 times wider, excuse me, wider than the background space or the background width. So this is the movement. This is the CSS for the actual movement of the space, the picture of the space. And then we have the ID tag space, which has our background image in there, and that is sitting in the image folder, which has our 3 images in it. Overflow is hidden, so you can't see in case the image or anything makes the div tag larger than it's supposed to be. You won't see it. This tag is supposed to be a width of 400, height of 484. Position is relative, so it stays in the same place. And then we have the animation CSS tag for WebKit, Mozilla, MS, and Opera. And then we apply our keyframe, space move, to that div tag. And then we set it to 18 seconds, which we can change that to make it longer if it's running too fast for us. We're making it linear because we're only moving it sideways. And we set it to infinite, and that's how we get the loop. Now the next set of keyframes is for the satellite. So we make a set of keyframes for each of the different pieces that we're going to be using. So we have the space, we have the satellite, and then we have the spaceship. Now the satellite I've got rotating. So we start at 0%, we go to 100%. And 0%, there's no parameters in the open and closed curly brace, so we want it to start normally. We don't want anything to change. But at 100%, that's when we're changing where its location is, and we're changing how it's rotating. Now, you can change how many times it rotates by multiplying 360 degrees by however many times you want it to rotate. If I don't want it to rotate 2 full rotations, then I'm only going to have this being a negative 360 degrees. If I don't want it to go a full rotation, then I can do negative 180, and it'll only kind of turn a little bit. So I can change the way this transforms each time. But whatever I do here, I need to make sure that I do for the Mozilla, MS, and the Opera version of this. Which is just to change the number. If I change numbers up there, I got to make sure I change numbers down here. And then the satellite div tag, we have a width and a height for that, and that's just for the image itself. The image is actually really long, but it is a PNG file, so it's got a transparent background, so you can actually see the everything behind it. Position is absolute because we're starting in a specific spot, and then we're letting the CSS do the rest for us. The top, we're starting at the top by 75 pixels, so it starts down a little bit. And then we're starting to the left, 400 pixels. So we're starting off the screen. That's that 400 pixels, because the div tag that we're sitting on is 400 pixels wide. And remember that overflow is hidden. So since we're off the div tag, we're actually hidden. The z-index is 2, which means we're above 0, and 0 is the space scene, and we're above 1. So if our spaceship is in 1, index 1, then we're above that. We apply the animation tag. We call up our keyframe name, how many seconds we want. We're having it ease in, and that's why it starts out slow and then gets faster. The ease is 1 second, and then the infinite loop. And then we have our spaceship move, which we basically just have it going up and down 5 pixels. So it's just basically going up, down, up, down, up, down. And it's an infinite loop, so it's moving that up and down constantly. And because the background is moving, it's making it look like the actual spaceship is moving. The height and width of the spaceship div tag is the height and width of the actual image itself. And then we have a left and a top where we want the spaceship div tag to start. And we have a z-index of 3. So there's really no z-index of 1. That's just not there. And then here's our HTML, which is pretty much nothing. We have a body tag. And then we have our div tag of space. And inside the div tag of space, we have our satellite and our spaceship sitting inside that. So that's basically all we need to have our infinite loop of a background scrolling, and then we have a couple of images scrolling on top of that. Now inside the student resources for week 4, there's all kinds of links to more files like this with very different variations. There's also files to 3D objects. There's files for parallaxes for animation or animate. So you'll find other pieces of information that will be helpful as well.